Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bolt Action Reloading. In today's video, we'll be testing a new combination, 225 grain Hornady boat tail hollow point, as well as Hodgdon's H4831 shortcut. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see how I and the rest of you here make our group smaller, start now by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. That way you get notified when I post next week's video and you won't miss anything. Welcome to this week's video. This is actually somewhat of a viewer requested video. I've actually had a couple people reach out and mention that they would like to see this 225 grain boat tail hollow point by Hornady tested, not necessarily a 4831 shortcut, but they specifically had good luck with it in their Thompson Center Compass and wanted me to give it a try. If they've had good results and I could possibly, I'm certainly willing to do such things. And so, like most of our combinations, we're going to be starting off with a pressure and velocity test for today. Talking about our test platform a little bit, it is a Thompson Center Compass chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. We have replaced the plastic factory stock with a Boyds Pro Varmint laminated hardwood stock. It also has an adjustable comb height. We've added a 20 MOA EGW long action scope base. Our scope is an SWFA fixed 16 power scope, mil, and currently wearing 30mm Seekins precision scope rings, as well as an SWFA bubble level. Our factory triggers have been upgraded with an MCARBO trigger spring kit, and we are reducing the recoil today with a Precision Armament M4-72308 brake. All the details of the rifle that you should hopefully be able to see in the description box below. We've actually tested several combinations in this rifle. Since we had a viewer recommendation and I had these on the shelf, I thought there was no reason not to give them a try. Not sure 4831 shortcut would be everybody's first choice for this, but our source for today's data is the Hornady 10th edition manual, and this actually was one of the highest velocity for the powders I had in stock, for which I actually had data for. For data or convenience or whatever you'd like to blame, this isn't what we're going to be testing today. Our Hornady book actually has data starting at 60 grains, going all the way to 70.4 grains, but for today's testing, we're going to be starting out at 66.2. Now the brass we're using for today's test is Remington Brass. It's had multiple firings on it at this point, but it has been annealed, neck turned, trimmed for length, as well as chamfered and deburred. The primer we're using for today is the Fed 215M Large Rifle Magnum Match Primer. And in case you're not familiar with this projectile, the part number is 30903. Like I mentioned, Hodgdon's H4831 shortcut is our powder for test today. Starting at 66.2 grains, we're going to be going up in 0.3 grain increments, maxing out today at 70.4 grains. Our cartridge base to ogive measurement we'll be testing is about 20 thousandths off the lands, and that measurement today is 2.873 inches. Our cartridge overall length will be ending up somewhere around 3.559 inches. Unfortunately, this is not going to fit in our factory magazine. However, if this shoots pretty well, we might actually move those back to see if a load that will fit in our magazine will actually shoot well on the rifle. But we're willing to single feed at this point just to see if we can get some good groups. 20 thousandths off the lands is where we've seen accuracy with some other projectiles, and so that's where we'll be starting today. According to our Hornady manual, that 70.4 grain charge is going to end up somewhere around 2750 feet per second, only 50 feet per second off what our max velocity powders are, which according to the book is Reloader 22, not a temperature stabilized powder, and Norma MRP, which I have absolutely none of. Hoping for those low SD numbers today, we are going with that H4831 shortcut, largely because it is one of Hodgdon's extreme powders, which hopefully its temperature stability will help lower our SDs and give us some better statistics. Certainly no guarantees, but that's certainly what we're hoping for moving forward. All that information out of the way, let's go out to the range and find out our results, and afterwards we'll come back and discuss the pressure and velocity that we find. You might have figured out by now, same target cam rained out, so no real target cam footage to show you guys today. Unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. However, all is not lost. We still have lots of information to talk about, so let's get right to it. If you guys are interested in the group size, you can see our group is actually a 1.792 MOA. As far as our velocity tests have been going so far, really that's one of our better groups. So overall, I'm very interested. If I didn't mention already in the video, there has been one gentleman in our comment section making repeated comments about the 225 grain hollow point, and one of the reasons why I picked it today. So as we go through our velocity graph, we'll put that on the screen. Keeping in mind, somewhere around 66.1 grains, we would have expected a velocity of around 2,600 feet per second. We actually started down at 2558. At 70.4 grains, we actually expected basically 2750 feet per second, but we only ended up with 2734. Now, a couple things with this velocity curve that I do find fairly interesting overall is where we seem to find the nodes today. Down at the bottom of our chart there, that 2610 feet per second area does seem very interesting, at least to me. Spanning almost a full grain and only actually having an extreme spread of somewhere in the ballpark of 11 feet per second is a very interesting realm to explore if you ask me, especially if our initial loading indicates accuracy with this projectile. Funny enough, when we tested the 4831 shortcut with the 220 grain Sierra Match King, we actually found a velocity node somewhere in that same area, moving at almost identical velocity and, again, spanning almost a grain. Having those charts come out very similar in those areas is very interesting, at least to me. Moving on up, moving anywhere between 67.7 and 68.3, looks like 2630 even seemed to shoot a reasonable velocity fairly repeatedly. Not quite as far as a node, but 30 feet per second higher. But all the rest of the data on here actually moving all the way up to that 70.1 and 70.4 grain load. 2733 and 2734 right at max. If we could get a load tested around there, number one, a higher velocity is where we'd typically be more interested in shooting if that was a reasonably accurate load. And having a standard deviation that indicated that might be low like that would certainly be an area worth exploring. And certainly not that I encourage anyone to exceed maximum loads in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people like to tease Hornady about publishing slightly lower published loads that might actually be safe, but draw your own conclusions. Let's look at the brass and you guys can decide for yourselves. Showing you guys the brass all the way from the 66.2 to 70.4 grains. Same story as a lot of things on here when we're inside load data. We really don't see any excessive pressure signs today. Our flattened primers seem to still be the case in all of our loads in this rifle. Primer crating is again very common. Factory loading or any loads in here, light or stout. In fact, in this Remington brass, it really does look like very rounded primers still, and the cratering is minimal compared to most of the loads that we've shot. Certainly exploring anywhere around that upper area would not be anything I would hesitate to do. Along those lines, though, keeping in mind our load conditions for today, the temperature at which we shot these orders was 46 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity was 43%, our density altitude was 416 feet. Certainly might look a little different on a warmer day, but those rounded primers sure give me hope that we're nowhere close to an unsafe load. If accuracy is there up on that higher velocity, we certainly would be interested in testing that, at least when it comes to this projectile. So all of that aside, let's talk about the future testing of this projectile. Unless I'm wrong, and I'd love for you guys to point this out in the comment section below, it really seems these 225 grain hollow point boat tails have actually been discontinued by Hornady at this point. I do say they have a 225 grain ELD, but the boat tail hollow points seem to be eluding me at this point. If you guys see different, I'd sure like to know in the comment section below, especially if we actually got these things to shoot well. The box you see on the table here is the only box I have left out of these, and I think we're down to somewhere around 65 to 70 projectiles. Certainly not something we'd be able to load and take to a match even if we wanted to. But who knows, maybe that 225 grain ELD will work similarly and give us just as good a results. We won't know until we test it. Seeing our overall group actually being on the smaller side of things that we have tested, I was really encouraged to try this combination over again, was looking to pick up another box of these to make sure we didn't run out, and it seems I might be a bit too late. Anyway, if you guys are interested in seeing some more in this weight class or this combination, I'd love to know, or maybe we'll just end up testing something else. Even if you're not interested in loading for 300 Winchester Magnum though, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any comments or questions on today's video, please put those in the comment section below. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you like the content, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the bell icon so you get notified when I post next week's video. I hope to see you back next week, and until then, stay safe in small groups.